Dear citizens of the world, there is a practical solution to nearly all the world ills. I will give a blueprint, stay with me. Now, someone once said that we haven't had an avatar lately because the world has not gotten bad enough. An avatar is a savior, like Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad. The news is, the world has gotten bad enough. When 70% are living in near famine or poverty, 70% of people are on medication, and most on other addictions, war everywhere, and a list of atrocities from here to the moon. Yes, we have already gone to hell in a handbasket. But first briefly, we are held hostage by the elite. Our government are only their puppets carrying out their orders, and give the appearance of a democracy. They won't reveal themselves. They are the Illuminati, and their offshoots, the Federal Reserve and central banks, and more. They dole out the money. Hence the quote by Rockefeller, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws. They are the law, accountable to no one." The earth is in such a chokehold by them as they dictate any laws of consequence in our lives. They can buy entire armies, they alone decide on wars, when it starts, when it ends, gas prices. They dominate the media, and anything of importance that affect our lives. Who's the next president, every world affair, the schools, the institutions that run our lives. The debt and taxes are an illusion. I will demonstrate. Notice how there is endless money, always enough money for wars, for politicians, for corporations, for CEOs. There is no ceiling. And yet where the money is truly, in fact needed, there is not enough. And they didn't borrow money from the Chinese to bail out the banks. They simply wrote out a check to the banks. More simply, they passed some numbers from their own computers to the bank's computers, and the banks were absolved. That simply, they deemed it so. And so, with everything else, it is the same. That's why they don't care if they pay someone $400 for a hammer or $100,000 for a truck, or $8.5 trillion now, for space studies. You still think it's all borrowing from the Chinese? You really believe if we were $17 trillion in debt to the Chinese, they would keep lending to us? No. It's purely at their discretion who gets paid and how much. And if the Chinese quit lending to us, we would put a hold on a war because now we don't have enough money to pay for it? Especially if we are in this illusory debt, and even if we weren't, what backwards logic, what argument, what reasoning allows for giving away to corporations, who get billions of dollars handed over to them every year in so-called subsidies, in the form of grants, assistance, and tax breaks? No one questions. Why are we handing billions of dollars to billionaires? Why do the rich need handouts? Notice when something is so backwards, bewildering, perplexing, nonsensical, it doesn't even register with the public. Economics should be linear, 1 + 1 = 2. Not here. By creating elaborate economic webs, the truth is hidden. There's no logic, so the mind won't even try to wrap itself around it. Calling it complex, rather than declaring, hey, they're withholding from those in need, in order to give to those well-off. This demonstrates just how glaring facts are overlooked, dismissing them as too complex. Technically, and in truth, the world banks create money out of thin air, but only disperse as they see fit. By keeping a few other rich in power, they secure their positions. It is all in fact a created deception. Hitler's PR said, "Make the lie big, and people will believe it." Kissinger said, "Who controls the money, controls the world." Really think about this? So, why does the Illuminati basically hand over monies to large institutions, when we are supposedly in debt? And so little to schools, veterans, healthcare, homeless, services, and other aid? Billions to fossil fuel, to agribusiness, but not to small farms? Because the elite Illuminati only feed institutions people that keep us dumbed down and oppressed, exactly what's needed to keep everyone subjugated, and thereby guarantee their supremacy. Taxes. Do you really believe that after the money's collected filter through so many hands, and when it reaches the very last person, few persons, they can't manipulate these numbers? There's no one to audit them. Perhaps the treasurer is in fact counting, we're in the whole 17 trillion, we in fact have no money. But it has never mattered. The actual one or few who see the final collected numbers make all the decisions. They can add a few more zeros, take away a few more zeros. If we in fact owe China 17 trillion, simply write them a check. Who's going to tell them no? They are accountable to no one. In fact, China in 2012 printed tons of money, and are they experiencing hyperinflation? We know so often people in positions of power are corrupt. You can imagine ones reaching such heights as to rule the earth, are the most demonic. They can, with a flick of a pen, end every misery in the world. These are people who enjoy torture, power, and they are divisive to keep us at war. Again, the taxes and national debt are just tactics to keep us in fear. That we need them. If there's any truth to this tax system, it is just for posterity. And, if you knew the heinous acts the elite carry out behind the scenes, and around the world, including maligning and destroying other continents, in order to stay number one in power, you would implode. A quote by Kissinger: "Military men are dumb, stupid animals, to be used as pawns for foreign policy." There's one solution. Ready? Remove money and every problem, nearly every problem, is gone. I will show in detail how this is very possible. You ask, how will I get all my necessities and non-necessities met? Who will take away the trash? I'll lose my home. I will outline all this, stay with me, even some ways to initiate this. First, you hear money is just a form of energy. It's not evil, it's the people that make it so. So here it is. No money. No problem. It's like saying, the junk food is not the problem, it's the people eating it. Same preface. And by the way, this is the Illuminators' only Achilles heel, yes, money. Now, you don't need a piece of paper with ink to build a ship. You need volunteers and elements. Consider, now there are thousands and endless charitable organizations and they don't really have a problem finding volunteers, and many are overflowing with them, and many of those volunteers have jobs. Now, imagine if those volunteers didn't have regular jobs, this would create more volunteer time. Or, if no one is working at a paying job, you would have an entire world of volunteers right there, because everyone's time is freed up. In fact, half the jobs and charities in the world right now are created to control the damage that has at its base money, from police, to courts, to bombs, to social aid, to disease. No longer needing these charities, the people and their time are freed up. All this time, and energy, and people, freed up to volunteer their time. Most everyone I've met prefers to work. And imagine all these hearts and minds freed up. The reduction in stress produces even more time and energy to volunteer. Imagine, no more corporations making junk food, producing more health, and hence more time and energy in people. Imagine, 99% overall reduction in stress, producing even more time and energy in people. People finally doing things from the heart and not just to get by, doing things to help each other. All the scientific and engineering minds now freed up to come up with solutions. When you have an entire world of people working together, and for the common good, and with creativity, there are no problems, only solutions. Mountains can be moved. There is every type, even those who want to organize, to manage. Say you need toilet paper, we can have some central locations to disperse items. More than enough trainers, volunteers to make them. And so goes with everything else. For example, plastic bags, except we will have biodegradable bags. If there is an item we can only get from other countries, we can barter, We'll give them goods in exchange for their goods. Do you know the United States is the third largest exporter, and the second largest importer? The difference of what we take and go out is a few percentage points, which balances out our resources. Some people refuse to work. Well, we provide for them now, so it wouldn't be much different. And yet it will, as people will change for the better. You must have heard by now that the powers that be have under lock and key free energy that was invented by Tesla and others. Something the size of a little box can power up an entire town, and you don't even need the utilities. You know there's technologies now to harvest water just from the air. There's technologies to desalinize the ocean. Free energy for everyone. There are cars that can run on water and hydrogen, and we can have solar-powered streets, as has been demonstrated. In blank lots, we plant fruit trees and vegetables spanning the blocks. Instead of landscaping, there's food gardens everywhere. These have already been done in large areas with great success. Even in large parks now, they have dedicated to public food growth. Neighbors can grow and share their food. And if gardening is not your thing, volunteers might help. Farmers who do it for the love mostly can have volunteers come grow crops for them, and it doesn't have to be monocrops anymore. People who enjoy driving will take these foods to our frequent farmer, flea market, and exchange markets. Housing. Do you know that abandoned or empty homes outnumber the homeless 6 to 1? Do you know how many institutions, buildings and businesses that are used for damage control will not be needed, freeing up more space? If more space is needed, there is open land. With so much trust and goodwill abounding, people will offer their lands to make modest-sized homes. Do you know how many folks want to build on their land to house others, but won't because of restrictions? If you think there aren't enough people to build homes or cars, and there are, but if not, now there are 3D printers that will do this in a matter of days. A fair question is, who gets to live by the water, who's inland? With more space, maybe we can have more man-made lakes, water holes, and more greenery, so all areas are nature landscaped. Housing will require a lot of planning, creating, perhaps a lottery system, or some other system. Some might opt to tear down their homes to build new ones, if say perhaps they're willing to have modest-sized dwellings around, and a community, with majority vote, and some common areas. Volunteers will go to arid countries where it's difficult to grow on the land, and change the actual soil to accommodate growth. This has been proven. There are plenty of techies out there, they'll keep the internet and the dang cell phones in order. Clothing, again, everyone without jobs, so many love the textile, or would love to learn, from looming thread, to sewing, to knitting. We'll grow hemp, bamboo, and other fibers used to make authentic natural quality clothing. You think there are jobs no one wants? Not true. There are volunteers now doing the lowliest of jobs. Or, folks can commit to a year, just one example, at an undesired job. I would do any job, and I think many would, because there's so much at stake here. And because everyone will finally want a society that works, they'll gladly pick up the garbage. And by the way, there'll be so little garbage and recycling to pick up. Perhaps once, twice a month, as most garbage and recycling is packaging. And so much we'll get in bulk. With this population, we need to get green. There are people who love to make furniture, who'd love to learn to make furniture. So many who love to teach freed up to teach it. We can have whatever we truly want and need. Aside from this, don't more of us want simplicity? The happiest are not the richest, evident to many. The unhappiest are often the ones with the most toys, the next acquisition. If your riches are only being used for self-serving, you are unhappy. Period. Many billionaires, if they were content and whole, would not have a need to rob others of their energy through control, domination. Wondering where you'll get your medicine? There are trained pharmacists who will provide. But perhaps better, we'll have herbalists and experts concoct even better natural medicines for you. The natives had their own healers. These natives were healthier than us. The thing is, we won't need all those hospitals and pharmacies. We'll need a bare minimum. People will be healthy, get healthy. Why is sickness the norm now, with nearly everyone ill or diseased? Because the air, water, and land are poisoned, and with herbicides, the foods with pesticides, antibiotics, and other poisons. The stress levels are off the charts. The majority are either physically or mentally ill. Sickness has become the norm now. All this transformation will generate miraculous healings. There will be doctors and medical practitioners perhaps making house visits, like in the old days. You'll probably need a fraction of the eye doctors and dentists, because teeth and eyes often correlate with our health. About the main service needed will be for rarer surgeries. Seafood? People like fishing. Our meats. People eat meat primarily to numb themselves. As people feel light, healthy, many naturally won't want it anymore, or very little. I'm not suggesting anyone has to go vegan. We won't be caging and torturing animals for our food. So many love to keep farm animals. We can have them more locally, pasture-raised, cage-free, without hormones, etc. Smaller piles of manure are manageable, and mostly composted, versus wasted into the air and water on large agribusiness. There are those who actually like preparing the animals for consumption. It will only be done humanely and regulated. The demand will probably be a tiny fraction of what's wanted now. Notice when you feel more light and healthy, you want more live and light foods. More on this later. We won't have this police state. 97% of crimes are money-rooted anyhow. Virtually no more crime. Do you remember the volunteer vigilante group, the Guardian Angels? God bless them. They actually guarded the streets for the love of justice. Yes, there are many who go into this because of actual care and concern for all beings. They will be our guardians, not police. We even have law-abiding citizens now who dress as superheroes. This is true, who scour the streets nights, and at the very minimum, give us some morale and hope. I'll outline more. First, more on how people buy into everything they're spoon-fed. People simply believe the experts. You often hear, the economy's in peril because we don't have gold backing our dollar. How will gold in our vaults help? Are we going to run out of printers, of ink? If the dollar crashes, will we scrape off pieces of gold and hand them out? Then will people scrape off a piece to buy bread? Initially, the new banks had to prove themselves. They used it as collateral. Some argue, then we couldn't print more than the gold we have, in order to stem hyperinflation. So if there's a rise in population, how's that accounted for? If we don't find enough gold, do we limit bank accounts? Do we even need a piece of metal to dictate how much is printed? All the research will yield fancy, convincing sounding talk, and yet no direct applications. One minor yet telling example how we don't use our own critical faculties to decipher for ourselves. You hear socialism will bankrupt the system. Under LBJ and FDR, socialist systems only created prosperity for all, and also in many countries now. We in fact are a socialist country, but only for the very rich. By the way, no one truly understands how the stock market rises. An expert finally said, it's basically a Ponzi scheme. Perhaps there's some truth to stocks, but that statement makes much sense to me. Taxes. This is a quote by the Grace Commission. 100% of what is collected is absorbed solely by interest on the federal debt. All individual income tax revenues are gone before one nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government. Again, they absorb it on their bogus debts. So, ask, how have they paid for anything? Much less for wars. 7 presidents have been assassinated for not cooperating with the transatlantic banking dynasties, including Lincoln, Kennedy, McKinley, and others. In a free society, on local, state, and federal levels, where organization, accountability, guidelines, and systems are needed, they can be implemented or carried out by representatives, ones we actually choose. They will be managers of systems the people put in place, who are voted in fairly and are actual public servants, as is meant to be, who are beholden to the people. Perhaps the public can propose and vote on measures through the net, or some other easeful means. If politics dictates we still need soldiers in order to ensure safety, many would love to serve. Just don't be surprised if other countries and populations follow suit and go moneyless, and vow to protect each other. No one will want to build nuclear arms if money's not involved, or people are now too smart to be controlled. And we will still keep wise, watchful, and protectful. There you have it. All our basics are met. There is more. But first, what problems will a moneyless society solve? Virtually any and every problem. Thinking we could have a functioning society, much less a happy one under money, has proven to be very idealistic, and not workable, not sustainable. There will be peace or virtually no wars, and the US is the initiator of most wars, or the instigator. If you still believe we go to war to protect ourselves rather than for stealing other vital resources and power, you've been duped. And money and power are at the root of all wars. No more slave labor and slave wages. Most everything we own is made by the slavery of sweatshops, near everything. No more human sex trafficking. A world of healthy people. No parking fees, meters, entrenched in divorce or other courts, rooted in money. No more advertising. No more climate change. Do I need to mention how infinitely gargantuan these problems are? We won't have a world by 2030 without reversing some of this. No more traffic, which is only during set commute work hours. No more parking hassles. Human slavery. There are still areas where there is actual forced human slavery, or they lose their lives. Nearly no more prisons. 97% of those incarcerated can be traced back to money. Even the solely violent criminals had a start in a mad money society. No more police brutality. No more animal trades, from furs to animal fighting, to poaching, the list never ends. Do you know I'd spend 10 minutes a day signing online petitions to ban harrowing animal abuses of all kinds, a new signature every few seconds against such cruelties. No more taxes. No more repetitive job injuries and hazards. No more being steeped in red tape and so much paperwork. No more permits for every trivial thing. No more drug, alcohol abuse. Yes, solid studies have proven that when people feel connected, happy, they not only don't get addicted, but will get off of their addictions. The drug war. Over. No more robberies. People rob to sell for money or drugs. No more need to even lock our doors. No more parents fighting with the junk food industry to get their kids to eat normal. Majority of our lives is spent in damage control, from health, to meters, to fighting the system, ad infinitum. All this time will be freed up. High-rise buildings, filled with mostly damage control businesses, which block our sun. Not needed. No more homelessness. No more angry contracted people on the street, at work, everywhere. No more having to be under the thumb of a callous boss or landlord. No more bridge tolls. No one saying I have to move because of my job or school. No more bees dying off. Nearly no allergies. No more bills. No more birth defects. No more unwanted children, stemming from desperate people. And the orphans now will be adopted out as there aren't any adoption fees. No more killing and jailing of people who are whistleblowers. No more censorship. No more systemic racism. No more deceptive contract work on your car, home. No more loneliness. No more torture sites as in Guantanamo and the Chicago Torture Detention Center. It's sad I even have to say that. It's there, and right under our noses. no lack of land space. Do you know that the animal agribusiness takes up 45% of the Earth's space? About half our Earth consumes 1/3 of our water, and the largest contributor to climate pollution? No more student debt or other debts. No more people being jailed for not paying debts. No more chemtrails. No more pesticides in our foods. No more hard porn, causing children to be rough and forceful with our girls in as early as grade school. No more spending so much of our valuable time fighting the system, from unfair business, to bills, signs, picketing. Constantly fighting for our rights, and where does it get us? Once in a while, they throw us crumbs, peanuts. And by the way, rarely anything of major importance gets passed. All of that over. Nearly no car accidents, since there won't be substance abuse, or set commute hours, or overstressed people, which is when it usually happens. What about bringing back the rubber bumpers? 2. Between the flying cars and driverless cars that drive themselves, and are accident-proof, even less accidents. If there's a rare accident, a volunteer will fix it. No more insurance hassles. These problems are infinitely debilitating to all sentient beings. People are left feeling depressed and hopeless. If our neighboring country went moneyless, no more immigration problems. Let me tell you a little story. This is true. I was in a town in Mexico. 2 locals relayed to me how 25 years ago, the people were thriving there. Everyone kept their doors unlocked. Children played outside. There was no crime. They even took in strangers. Mom and pop vendors and stores lined the place. Then big Western corporations took over, Costco, Walmart, and others, and drove the local businesses out. Poverty set in. Poverty breeds criminality, and now, everyone has bars on their windows. This speaks volumes. Consider, when there's prosperity, trust and goodness abounds. The Western capitalism, Westernization is what drives people to flee here. No, it's not that they want to be with white people, or that they prefer the US, it's that we exploited, destroy their economy, so they're forced to flee here. This one example reveals so much, and the list of problems I haven't mentioned, that would get solved, is probably even longer. And there's so much in our large world we don't hear about. We must ease, the suffering of all sentient being. Every living animal. Animals are no less important than us, no less. If you think you're superior to animals, then let's compare. Animals possess superpowers humans don't, and extrasensory perceptions. They're loyal, they love, they hate, they're jealous, guilty, they show off. What's the difference? They don't speak words. And have you checked the net lately? There are animals that speak, do sign language. Nothing they haven't done. Elephants that paint, better than most humans. Dogs that drive, surf, cry. Animals that have risked their lives to save other animals, and other humans. And it's endless. Chickens that broke up a fight between 2 rabbits, then gave them a short lecture. Yes. Pigs are known to be some of the smartest. Have you even looked into a cow's eyes and seen such humanness? These are what we want to cage, torture and take into our bodies. I'd like to break a giant false assumption on this planet. If everyone's doing something, it must be right. History has proven this to not be so. Endless instances where the masses just follow. Slavery, Hitler's regime. I'll just say it. The vast majority, 80–90%, are easily indoctrinated. It doesn't matter if every person around you is doing something, you need to check deep within yourself to decide for yourself if something is right. In eating animals products now, please do it consciously. Buy from small organic farms, found at farmers markets. Vote with your dollars, reduce, or go vegan. In the moneyless society, where everyone is joyful, light, free, healthy, you'll want very little to weigh you down, if any. Don't be surprised if you lose this addiction to dairy and meats. The first vegan butcher has opened in the US, and the line goes down the block. My God, with the variety of nut milks, why would anyone want dairy? Have you seen now that several scientists have created an egg substitute that tastes exactly like eggs? You can't tell apart, made out of plants, herbs, and so forth. And healthy. I can't seem to find this video again. Who knows if the egg industry's squelched it. It goes to show, on the horizon, we can create milks, meats, etc., that are perfectly healthy, and taste just like the real thing. You say it's not perfect enough? Do you really need perfect? That is the very self-centered mindset that is destroying our Earth. More, there can be some transitioning into grasshoppers, ants, or other staples. Yes, this may be gross now, but know this, you only adapt to what you're given, or ever fed. So, for instance, if as a baby, you were never fed meat, as an adult, you'd find it completely repulsive. Same with Asia, they eat things we find odd, but they were born into it. Likewise, how about starting our future offspring with more conscious alive foods? If you knew about the simple vegan dishes that are made, how much more delicious they are, you wouldn't miss it. Now, aside from the 45% of land the animal agribusiness takes up, the 1/3 of all our water used, the highest methane carbon contributor, and other absurdities, there's one big one few have considered. With 150 billion animals slaughtered every year, that's right, 150 billion slaughtered every year, just for our food alone. All their pain, resentment, and trust, they do have this. It's in the air, and it affects everyone. One reason maybe so many people are going mad. Before you think this is just some woo-woo spirituality, there's science behind it, and without going into too much, consider, you walk into a room, no one's flinching, but you've felt the heaviness in the air, hence the saying, the tension was so tight, you could cut it with a knife. Noticed how one place can emit a certain energy, but different in another? Know how you can sense someone's focus on you, behind you? We've all heard of the water experiment, where it changes according to love or hate, or how someone knows what another is thinking no matter how lengthy their distance apart. You've heard of a literal deadborn, who when the mother held the baby for 6 hours, it came back to life? Feelings carry energy. You don't think animals hate and resent? You heard of the lion at the zoo, who the only time it escaped was when a boy was taunting it, in order to kill that boy. Yes, thoughts and feelings have souls that permeate and affect everything else around them. Now don't be surprised if we become so at peace with the animals, that many wild animals will just start trusting us and not run away, the same way they do on the Galapagos, where animals don't experience being threatened. How some of this might look. So, you'll hear much less cars so early in the morning, going to their industrial jobs. Much more ease in the air at 5 a.m. People will want to do their volunteer work, some will want 2, some will want 10 hours. Most will want to commit to a reasonable amount, just depending, and people will prefer to be timely, because there's so much invested in this. Who doesn't want to be a part of paradise? Or simply, an end to suffering? Now, you won't have to endlessly do the same repetitive job or sitting for endless hours. That's not what we're meant to do. We can afford more varietal tasks. We'll have more time for others, for being social, for family, for our pets, for lingering. How often do you get to linger at anything? The rat race now doesn't leave much room for this. Food will be bountiful and given away freely, shared, and or all around us. People will still want to make movies, or songs, but not just mostly what the elite put out. Don't worry, there may still be action movies, but done tastefully. We can trade any and every kind of service. If you don't like cleaning, cooking, but maybe you can do some handyman stuff, or babysitting. And at times, you might just do it without expecting anything in return. If you're concerned you don't know what to do with your time, there are those who will organize your life for you, life coaches, another service. When there are conflicts of any kind, we will have real social workers, chosen therapists, representatives, mediators, settling them. Not courts. Schools will be completely different. Right now, they're by design, institutions that teach worthless information mostly, to keep us disempowered, designed to squash any thinking for ourselves, and therefore go blindly along with all we're told, to not question anything. Because if we forget our humanity, we will stop thinking for ourselves, especially if we're in fear. This is why so many creative teachers who want to stimulate, create, nurture the individual, are often driven away by politics, likewise with health workers, social workers, politicians, and other professions. Many parents might take turns at homeschooling, ensuring small groups, no more homework, and real-life skills and crafts can be learned. Why haven't they taught in schools how to forage for food and other life survival skills? The native Indians used acorns as a staple. Still, school is a fairly new concept in history. People learn in all sorts of settings and ways. The elderly will no longer need shoddy nursing homes, but round-the-clock real care. There may be potlucks everywhere, or halls dedicated to potlucks, people streaming with foods. If you won't prepare, maybe you bring ingredients, or clean after. People will find they want to find all kinds of reasons to bring people together, especially if they want to share what they love. Some may want to set up coffee stands, so you can still have your latte. Artists can freely practice in public, and make every sort of thing, from plates to frames. We'll have lists, managers of registries, of every need, of every skill, of workshops, of barters, exchanges, and so on. There may be so many group activities all over. There is a grand misconception that people, if left to themselves, are disorderly, and that authority is needed to keep them in check, otherwise there's only chaos. This is under the assumption that people, given a choice, choose destruction. On the contrary, the vast majority, when given hope, faith, brotherhood, harmony, ease, joy, and connection, react in kind. A powerful example how ease and freedom brings out the best in beings. In Costa Rica, there's some land where 900 stray dogs are kept, roaming freely, all within a foot of each other, fed and cared for, and are adopted out from there. The common shelters have them singly caged, believing only chaos would ensue. Not the case, the roaming dogs are peaceful, healthier, and happy. Now this is not comparing dogs to humans, it's comparing our misconceptions on the power of freedom. And, if you had to compare, it would seem animals are more likely to act out, yet did not. Truly consider the implications of this example, and its testament to freedom, and contentment for beings. Whatever the hurdles we face, we will come up with solutions. Yet again, when the collective masses all benefit each other, there is a mutual relating that pervades all. Happiness is no longer just in the future, but in the moment, for once. And ask yourself, what would you be willing to sacrifice, to do without, in order to have actual peace? If, let's say, no more airlines. Well, they're launching flying cars now, and many love to pilot planes and anything associated with airports, so don't think we can't have airports. And just suppose if I had to take boats, ships anywhere. Point is, whatever you think you might do without, isn't it worth it simply to have less stress? That alone is worth it by itself, so long as I have my very bare necessities. Whatever challenges or sacrifices made, you'll have endless better material things, situations, and priceless treasures in its place. Now some understandably think, oh, this vision is too Pollyanna, too goody-goody. Not an invalid concern. After all, the balance, the yin-yang concept, how do you have day without night, no peace without conflict, no love without hate, no joy without misery? Not to fret, if drama is needed, it will present itself, and maybe it won't be, but only in just enough for our little nervous systems to handle. As of right now, we've only been fed and have mostly known how to navigate around survival or torment, to where contentment might be foreign, even uncomfortable to some. The good news is, you can adjust, or else live in a miserable world, then die. Some spiritual thinking is, we need chaos in order to evolve. Realistically, and if you're truthful and honest, people are getting smarter, but not kinder, which is at the heart of evolving. And in fact, so often are behaving fear-based, more greedy, or going mad. If half a country is voting for warmongering, divisive candidates, then not that many people have woke up. And in the US, why are there 2,300 serial killers a year, versus a handful in other major countries? What are they cultivating there? In the end, it's not about you and me, it's not about our happiness. More importantly, all this suffering, so much suffering, has to end. Perhaps someday enough people will wake up. But will it end our list of problems? And then another bad apple will appear, and dream of a way to spoil the bunch, and so the cycle repeats itself, so long as there's money to tempt. The other constant you hear is, be the change you want to see in this world, or, you can only change yourself, don't change the world. Therein is truth. If everyone honestly looked inward and changed themselves, the world could be peaceful. Yet hoping for enough mass change to alleviate world mayhem could be a long wait, and hasn't been witnessed in the history of man. Worthy quotes, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. As long as the general population is passive, apathetic, diverted to consumerism or hatred of the vulnerable, then the powerful can do as they please, and those who survive will be left to contemplate the outcome. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. All these, working on ourselves, excuses have been used as a spiritual bypass to possibly not have to truly care about others' plights. Alleviating others' suffering is the best way to work on ourselves. In service, and finding ways to make this a better world is how you work on yourself. Other excuses for turning a blind eye is the prevailing thinking, well, if you talk about it, focus on it, you give the negative more power. While there's truth there, in that the mass consciousness creates our reality. This is not the same as having discussions, brainstorming, helping, which only brings it to light. Similarly, that if everyone simultaneously thought of having peace, the entire world could change. There is scientific truth there. And yet, do you think when the monks in Tibet were peacefully minding their own business, and were attacked, targeted for decades, that thinking, speaking of only good, or only looking within, thwarted their problems? Or, hoping for a truly evolved person, who it is said can influence 10 million people around them? Well, we've had some of those, and it hasn't changed our history. People, I'm not wanting to thwart your hopes. I am suggesting a common-sense way. One that people have lived this way in the past, and were more in tune and connected with each other, Mother Nature, and their own personal nature and peace. Trust, when there's enough of an outcry, the system changes under pressure, from sheer disgust by the popular masses. One example is of a social media got 3.7 million hits against a mega giant in India. The corporation had to pay its near 400 workers for mercury poisonings, when even the lawsuits hadn't gotten them anywhere. Or a time in Iceland where 90% of women workers walked off their jobs, and the system changed overnight. So maybe you yourself are privileged, or have an image to uphold. Why should you bother? Your life is fine. Like the sayings, whatsoever you do to the least of my bother, that you do unto me. If this holds little meaning for you, then your concern is primarily with yourself, and those mainly out for themselves might have surface joy, no depth. I repeat, we'll never attain happiness being self-serving, only concerning with ourselves or our immediate circle. Why? Because your child is my child. And again, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. The police and the police state. Here's one emergency, a pandemic, that there's nearly not enough outcry. Why isn't everyone posting and condemning, and calling, and protesting, and marching, and screaming foul? Note that the stories in the media are not even 1% of what goes on. See more dashcam and citizen videos on other sites to get a more complete picture. Patriotism is caring for your brothers and sisters. In order to do this, you must stay informed of what is going on. And if you have been made aware, and are not enraged and mortified, you may have some disconnect from your divinity. Denying, ignoring the facts is unjust. Get patriotic for humans. Get patriotic for animals. Get patriotic for the land. Since there's not enough of this uncomfortable conversation, I will talk about it. We are basically using our tax dollars to have violence committed upon us. It's not simply the public having attitudes or not complying. Not that that would excuse the police anyway. Still, I wish it were that simple. No, even children, an infant, seniors, pets are attacked. They profile, rape, brutalize, in the worst ways, in manners you wouldn't believe. Several times daily, with no accountability, and in some cases being promoted. They loot, rob, frame, destroy lives. They shame the public for simply even speaking out. They even act as the fun police, stopping people from singing, dancing, playing sports. They've often stopped others from saving others, like a woman drowning in a car, who died, or to Z and stopped one dad from pulling his baby out of a burning house. The baby died. Endless cases of insipid, horrendous, moronic acts. The worst part is, many more cases aren't even heard about, and don't even make it to the news feed because there aren't videos for them. Now, I had heard in one place, 50% plus of the police are criminal. It only takes a small percentage to commit all the damage they inflict daily. No, not all police are lawless. Here's my message, first to the police, who are decent and honorable, who actually care about the people, and care about justice. Please, it takes bravery and courage to not give in to the pressure. It must be very difficult to go into work every day, and face such tyrannies, and wishing to speak out to all the corruption, and it's difficult to band together, and you may even be ostracized, and bullied. I know many of you quit. Please take hold. Know that a day of reckoning will come. Know that you are not alone. Know that there is a reward for such strength. There is reward for such courage. God bless you. Now, to the brainless, criminal, sheep, arrogantly calling themselves public servants, and masquerading as police. You are mindless followers. You are actually terrorists of the worst kind. Committing illegal acts and atrocities. Please know, you ultimately have to answer to your Creator, if not in this lifetime, or the next life, then the afterlife. Please know, your acts are gutless and treasonous against the citizens of the world, citizens you are sworn to protect. You are held even more accountable than another committing crimes, because you, as a public servant, are held to higher standards. You will have to answer for your crimes. Exhibiting hunger for power is evident of powerlessness in your own lives. Quote, violence is nothing but your actions trying to cover that you are weak. A strong person will never be violent because he doesn't have to prove he's strong. A weak person has to cover he is weak, so he has to be violent. You are therefore very, 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 very weak. I am against shaming anyone. Yet when one is a danger to others' lives, when one is destroying others' lives, shame is in order. Shame is appropriate. To the cowardly police, shame, 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 shame on you. Shame on you. Know that you reap what you sow. No one escapes this truth. No one escapes their karma. Money's indirect effects have lended to utter lunacy, as in consistently punishing the innocent. Some recent minor examples: in one state, someone fined and even jailed for collecting rainwater, another removed from their home for living off-grid. One lady was sued because she gave water to dehydrated pigs in a hot metal vehicle. People arrested for feeding or administering health care to homeless. Children removed from their parents for the most ridiculous reasons, while real abusers keep their kids. Long jail terms for stealing bread, and little for businessmen stealing our livelihood. Everything is backwards. Often those committing the most heinous crimes are set free. How might this all get grounding? Start with a poll. How many of the 7 billion people of sound mind support this? Get a registry. How are they all willing to volunteer, to contribute? Get a grassroots. Perhaps locally, perhaps nationwide. Get creative. Brainstorm. Brainstorm. Figure everything that is needed to kickstart and sustain this. Who and how we'll have all essential items made? How people can be housed. Know, for instance, how many will be displaced because the landlords no longer want them there. Remember, nearly half of the earth will be freed up due to no more agribusiness. No more corporations, and certain institutions. Remember, the abandoned homes outnumber homeless 6 to 1. Know that people will build more places. Find out how many homes can be built on others' lands who are willing. Know how people will be fed. Perhaps the wealthy and others can offer to buy up infrastructure, land, utilities, to implement this. How many businesses are willing to keep functioning? Many people enjoy their crafts can contribute. Vote for administrators and executors, and of methods of handling public inquiries. Have everything in place for starting to meet all survival and some basic needs. Then, when a certain percentage of people are self-sustaining, it'll have no choice but to take hold. Do a pilot test in one town for a while, then in more areas. Perhaps you've heard, freedom, joy is our birthright. All the riches, power, toys, fame, nothing that's been chased has brought anyone any joy. Just ask any celebrity. Without peace, freedom, harmony, justice for all, none of those things have any meaning, if at all. I have asked a dozen people from all sections, including the most materialistic, the most vain, and rich, and naive, and young, this following question: if it would end just one major world problem, would you be willing to live in a tent or a simple cob structure, use a composting toilet, a solar shower, a solar oven, get around on a bike? And they all, without the slightest hesitation, said an emphatic, excited yes. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised. Dear precious brothers and sisters, no more rewarding the bad or the powerful. No more repression of those who are good. Let us unite our minds, our hearts, our souls, and make this earth really what it's meant to be, a beautiful place to live, a place we can finally speak what is on our minds, a place where we can be ourselves. Life is meant to be enjoyed. Let us make it much better. Let us unite in this one quest, a passionate quest, where trust and goodness abound. The time is now, for real and actual peace. We can know unconditional love. We can actually finally breathe. We can experience healthy air, land, and water. We can experience true health for ourselves, for others, for animals. We can feel safe. Open our floodgates to compassion. Have calm. Be empowered. Feel connection. Feel ease. Experience more consideration and thoughtfulness for each other. Have time for creativity. Have time for beauty. Triumph. Celebrate the good. Imagine sharing. Imagine revelry. We can wake in the morning with delight. Wake with excitement. We can rest our weary souls. We can release ourselves. We can know freedom. We can actually have a real life. And most of all, we can feel and be love. Never give up hope. Spread this message. Talk about this. Write about this. Make more videos on this. Share this. Know that darkness cannot survive in the light. Stay with the light. Thank you and God bless to all sentient beings. I love you all.